Uh, Good afternoon to all my friends and good afternoon to Miss Rahma Nuzulia. Today we are here from Group One. We wanna discuss about the barriers from intercultural communication. So the first when before we start to know the barriers of intercultural communication, first we must know what is the intercultural communication. So in my vision, intercultural communication is the way how to interact with the different cultural and will some information to exchange and to know about the different culture that will be make some communication. With intercultural communication, we have understanding about the value of the culture. So the main point of intercultural communication is how we interact with different culture. So in this discussion session, we're gonna discuss about the barriers in African, American, and African stereotypes, conflict, grudge, and the different with not only the stereotype, conflicts, and grudge. We're gonna uh, discuss about the culture shock, nonverbal action, interpretation, and perception and attitude. So, uh, from the article from the Fade Darbo, a Kafi Argash, and faculty mentor, we're gonna discuss about the African American and Africans. Me and Akbar will discuss this material first.
Okay. Thank you, Dave, for the chance to actually trying to explain one of the article that I chose about African Americans and Africans in terms of intercultural communication. And there's a lot of barriers that actually holding both of this culture. But although that they are came from the same ethnicity, but sometimes we can see that they actually grew up in a different culture. So that is what I'm gonna discuss today. So at first, the first topic is there's a lot of stereotypes and misconceptions that exist between African immigrants and African Americans in United States, including negative views held by both groups. So people from African American that grew up in America thinks that like the original immigrant African group are some kind of like an old school type of guy. Sometimes those type of people is not being accepted a lot whenever they trying to talk to a real African by an African American. Sometimes they get like a this gap of trying to understanding the way that they speak. Sometimes because African American back in the day, like in the 80s and in the 90s, they are very popular in terms of gang and hip hop stuff and all of those. And if we try to compare it with the real Africans that are an immigrant, they are still really holding tight between their cultures. Sometimes they talk politely. Sometimes they eat like a good food and not like a really cheap American food. Some things like that. So, what is the problem? One of the problem is actually the lack of historical education. Uh, Trying to distribute both of the perspective because both African Americans and Africans, they don't really talk a lot, but whenever they try to talk, there could be a barrier, there's a gap that could be seen whenever they try to talk, because African American thought that the like a real immigrant of African, they way too polite. The way that they speak, were using really like a deep and thick African accent, kind of like funny to hear, funny to listen to. But in the same perspective from the African immigrants, think that African American, the way that they talk is also weird because they use like a gangster stuff, using a slangs that not a lot of people at the time knows, unless they're from the west side or the east side, the sides that actually occur like a gangster. And because of the lack of historical and education, perspective from both of these culture, although that they came from the same ethnicity, it came into a conclusion that there's a lot of negative misconception about both of them, although that they came from the same ethnicity. So, what is the solutions? So, in the article, the writer is actually providing a solution by playing the media. We gonna use the media as a significant role in perpetuating the negative stereotype about Africa and African Americans. So they're trying to expose, not expose, actually trying to provide it with some information about both African Americans and also African immigrants. Trying to show what is like how the culture works and can they actually get along. And because one of the problem is the media back in the day, even until now, they kind of like not being really nice towards African immigrants or even African Americans. Sometimes they made a misleading news about one party, and sometimes trying to make them fight each other. That's why we gonna solve the problems by using the solutions of using the media as a platform for us to actually trying to explain both culture from a different perspective and see if there's still any uh, like there's so we could not make any differences between two cultures although that they same came from the same ethnicity. That is in summary, the media is actually trying to make them playing stereotypically. So that is my conclusion for the article that I'm discussing.
Okay, there are several common barriers in cross-cultural communication from the case of African and American and Africans that affect their interaction. So we are research in the same article that I get is about the language and the dialect of American and African, African American and African. That although language may be the same or have the similar roots, they are have a variation in dialect. So walaupun mereka punya sama dengan bahasa, tetapi dengan berdialek itu mereka berbeda. Those of them use the different vocabulary that can pose barriers in the understanding and communication. And the next is differentiation in values and norms. So African Americans and African may have different in social values, norms, and etiquette that can influence how they interact. Sometimes it can make a little conflict with the struggle with the value and the norms. And the difference in life and express in popular culture, like Albert said, the gangster, differing life experience including popular culture, music, trends may affect how the individuals of African American and African communication and interact each other. So the understanding the barriers that can we include in African American and African is will more communication bridge between the American and the African communication that we just like try to understand the culture and try to increase the negative stereotypes for the cultural to make a good cultural relationship to be good. So there's the case and the several case and the solution from us, Akbar and I, that we discuss about the African American and African stereotypes, conflict, grudge, and different language and dialect. Maybe not all the material included in this PowerPoint, but we are explained that with the all the material. Okay, the next about the first point, the next my friend will be discussing about their material.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Tata Rahmi, and my friend Aima will discuss the same article that we found on Google Scholar, and that is about the case of American media reports on China. So it's basically a study of intercultural communication barriers between China and the US. We see from the article, the introduction, next slide. China and some Western countries have been in a state of strategic competition for many years. Taking the United States as an example, there seems to be a growing consensus
Suruh chat
to
next slide,
advocate a
bro.
getting tough on China
Next
policy.
slide, bro.
However, most of the tough and provocative discourse might be due to the intercultural communication barriers between China and the Western. And as we know, for many years, China and some Western countries have been in constant conflict, especially with the United States, which mainly reflected in the news reports by the American media on the China. Uh, and then next slide. So in this article, next. Okay, so we found four type of issues from this case. I'm gonna explain a bit about the case of American media reports in China. Basically, the American media usually reports news about China, and it's always something bad. Uh, and then, um, the problem or the issues is on the screen. The first one is ethnocentrism. So we know ethnocentrism is a belief characterized by an excessive recognition of one's own culture as superior to other groups. Such intercultural communications barriers are common in American media coverage of China. So from the perspective of American media itself, they are not familiar with China and are often suspected of quoting out of the context. Jadi mereka suka OOT lah gitu. From the perspective of the content of news reports, they are too one-sided and lack the analysis and explanation of the key essence of the event. That is, the focus is not accurate. The second issue is stereotype. In recent years, China's influence in various fields has been on the rise. After the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, some people in the West hyped a new round of China Three Theory. On December 3rd, 2020, the Wall Street Journal of the United States published an article titled China is National Security Threat Number One. It's a bit uh, and that accusing China of its development in national defense, science, and technology.
30 menit di sini bukan 30.
And then for the third issues, we have prejudice. Prejudice is often due to a lack in depth understanding of a certain cultural group. As with stereotypes, prejudice is hard to eliminate once it is created. But different from stereotypes, prejudice is people's perception of a cultural group. So they often
Hmm?
uh, see other culture bad.
Cepat guys.
Yeah,
Sumpah, Cuk.
like that. And last issues, we have discrimination. We know always
Kan nggak, Ki?
American is common with Asian hate issues. Nah, China is included in their issues. So basically, discrimination refers to the public's exclusion of others, usually caused by stereotypes and prejudice. On February 3rd, 2020, the Wall Street Journal published a discriminatory news report titled "China is the real sick man of China" because of the pandemic we had back then, 2020. So this news report used the COVID-19 epidemic to attack China with racist discourse, and the title of the article was covered with racism and discrimination. This became a problem and an issues. The conclusion of our discussion is intercultural communication barriers are common in American media news reports in China. Some of them are very intense, while others are obscure. But basically, they are in line with the attitude barriers and behavior barriers and intercultural communication barriers. In terms of ethnocentrism, American media are not familiar with China, and they often take quotes out of context or OOT. The site news reports are too one-sided. The key essence of the event, that is, the focus, is not accurate. In general, American media news reports based on ethnocentrism tend to criticize China and praise their own country. Bisa dibilang seperti ethnocentrism too. So in order to eliminate the barriers to intercultural communication as much as possible, the paper puts forward the following two approaches. So the first one is American must treat American culture and the culture of other groups equally. Um, for example, before reporting traditional Chinese medicine, they can go to China to learn about TCM locally and reduce unnecessary misunderstanding about China's Chinese medicine. Second one, U.S. media need to avoid using stereotypes and prejudice to simply define a cultural group. They should not blindly accept information related to stereotypes and discard one that is inconsistent with the stereotype so as to believe in the uniqueness of individuals. Next slide. Okay, so
Okay, next.
this is my. We have to be aware of cultural diversity, and then the second one is be tolerant because we are human. All of us have to live in this world, and we are all the same. Uh, I think that's all from me. Maybe Aima will explain her perspective about uh,
The perspective on the issue of cross-cultural communication between China and the United States through American media report
Slide.
sometimes reflect stereotypes and limited viewpoints. It is important to understand the cultural context and societal values can influence how information is presented. To enhance understanding collaborative efforts and a more contextual approach can help address the barriers.
Oke, terima kasih Aima dan Tata dengan membahas dengan barriers yang naikin slide-nya. Membahas tentang the case of American media reports on China, all the barriers and all the solution that how to solve these barriers. Okay, the next Amanda and Nazira, can you discuss about your material?
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Baik, pada kesempatan kali ini saya dan teman saya Nazira akan membahas artikel kami yang berjudul Hambatan Komunikasi dan Gegar Budaya Warga Korea Selatan yang Tinggal di Indonesia.
Keluar jadi.
Jadi artikel ini sendiri bertujuan untuk mengetahui hambatan komunikasi dan gegar budaya warga Korea Selatan yang tinggal di Indonesia. Nah, berdasarkan wawancara dengan orang Korea yang tinggal di Indonesia, orang Korea tersebut memiliki pengalaman terhadap hambatan komunikasi. Nah, hambatan dalam komunikasi yang pertama yaitu saat pertama kali orang Korea ini ke Indonesia, orang Korea ini tidak dapat berbahasa Indonesia dan juga pelafalan bahasa Inggrisnya orang Korea berbeda dengan warga Indonesia. Dan hal ini yang menjadi hambatan bagi orang Korea pertama kali datang ke Indonesia. Lalu hambatan yang kedua yaitu hambatan komunikasi lainnya bagi orang Korea adalah saat belajar bahasa Indonesia. Orang Korea kesulitan dalam memahami pola kalimat bahasa Indonesia seperti subjek, predikat, objek, dan juga keterangan. Sedangkan pola kalimat bahasa Korea itu kebalikannya bahasa Indonesia. Contohnya begini. Dalam bahasa Indonesia, biasanya kan kita bilangnya saya mau makan nasi. Nah, sedangkan bahasa Korea kayak gini, saya nasi makan mau. Nah, selain itu juga, menurut orang Korea, pelafalan bahasa Indonesia banyak menggunakan R. Nah, orang Korea tuh merasa asing dan tidak terbiasa karena di dalam bahasa Korea tidak ada pelafalan R. Selain itu, hambatan lainnya dalam berkomunikasi adalah kebanyakan orang Korea belajar bahasa Indonesia dan yang dipelajari dan bahasa Indonesia yang dipelajari merupakan bahasa yang formal. Tetapi saat orang Korea mencoba untuk berkomunikasi dengan warga Indonesia, warga negara Indonesia menggunakan bahasa yang informal atau bahasa sehari-hari. Nah, hal itulah yang membuat orang Korea kesulitan berkomunikasi dengan kita, warga negara Indonesia. Itu juga orang Korea mengalami yang namanya culture shock ketika mereka tinggal di Indonesia. Nah, orang Korea yang pertama kali datang ke Indonesia mengalami culture shock karena di Indonesia banyak angkot dan motor. Nah, di Indonesia kan kebanyakan menggunakan transportasi motor. Sedangkan di Korea, motor tidak sebanyak di Indonesia, sehingga orang Korea takut-takut untuk naik motor karena belum terbiasa. Itu culture shock orang Korea lainnya adalah mereka kaget setelah melihat warga Indonesia yang makan menggunakan tangan dan di restoran Indonesia disediakan sendok atau garpu. Nah, hal tersebut dikarenakan di Korea Selatan terbiasa makan dengan alat makan lalu lintas di Indonesia. Nah, buat orang Korea, menurut mereka, untuk menyeberang jalan di Indonesia harus menerima resiko. Walaupun ada lampu merah, kendaraan masih terus lewat. Dan itu sangat menyulitkan bagi orang Korea yang baru pertama kali tinggal di Indonesia. Lalu yang terakhir, solusi yang dapat saya pribadi berikan yaitu orang-orang Korea tersebut harus mampu beradaptasi secara bertahap dengan lingkungan sekitar, dan juga mereka harus buatlah jaringan sosial dengan cara mencoba menjalin hubungan dengan orang-orang lokal yang ada di lingkungan sekitar agar dapat membantu mendapatkan dukungan dan pemahaman yang diperlukan dalam memahami budaya setempat. Kesimpulan dari ini akan dipaparkan oleh Nazira.
Baik, di sini saya akan melanjutkan materi dari Amanda Juliana. Nah, jadi intinya terhambatnya komunikasi itu merupakan salah satu penyebab dari terjadinya gegar budaya yang dialami dari warga Korea Selatan yang tinggal di Indonesia. Nah, selain itu, gegar budaya yang orang Korea alami ini saat tinggal di Indonesia adalah seperti perbedaan dari makanan.
Baik, sekianlah beberapa presentation from we are group 1 discussion about the barriers, membahas tentang hambatan-hambatan yang terjadi pada intercultural communication. Bagaimana kami membahas pada dari awal mengenai tentang intercultural communication, apa itu intercultural communication, kenapa terjadi hambatan dan apa saja jenis hambatan serta kasus yang dibahas tentang hambatan. Jadi beberapa dari kami tentang membahas tentang beberapa hambatan dan juga memberikan solusi. Saya harap untuk penyelesaian solusi dan kami sudah pada tahap antusias dan paham mengenai tentang hambatan dan solusi yang telah kami berikan. Jadi sekian saja beberapa tampilan atau pemaparan materi dari kami semua dari kelompok satu. Saya harap itu dapat bermanfaat dan saya ucapkan wabillahi taufiq hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat pagi.